So I kind of ran a study, an informal study on YouTube based on statistics from my YouTube studio, creator studio, as well as videos from different creators that I do follow on YouTube. And the findings were very interesting. I noticed three main things that I wanted to point out about viewership behavior on YouTube. And I'm not going to go into my YouTube studio and give all these specific details and information because there's so much, and I'm not going to be showing videos from other people's platforms, right? Or other people's channels, rather, because of the time. But I'm just going to talk it out to you because, as you may have recalled me in a other video with the phone here, I can look down and just tell you more about what I found. Okay, so one thing I noticed recently from this study was that the algorithm is always doing this thing. Now, I know some people have heard about YouTube and the algorithm, and some people say it works favorably for creators, and sometimes creators say it does not work favorably for creators. But I can actually say that it does when you're picking up trending topics. I think this is actually more so common sense information for a lot of people who are watching this, especially if you yourself are a creator as well. But just one example that I want to bring up, and many of you may have watched this, and if you haven't watched it, I encourage you to watch it. It was a book review I had done some weeks ago, and that book review, I didn't expect for it to blow up like it did, but it did blow up. And I believe a huge reason that it blew up was that I used the name of the author in the title of my video, and that person was already trending on YouTube, so therefore it picked up. And I thought to myself, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And that was how a lot of people who viewed the video got pulled in. It was recommended on a lot of the content I already talking about this particular person, and as well as content from that person's own podcast channel on YouTube. So, something that I have not told people yet was that I got advice from someone, a part of a particular company, some months ago that actually led to me creating that video. Now, he didn't tell me to create that video, but he gave me some very specific tips that led me to create that video. So, if you want me to create a separate video talking more about that, just drop it in the comments, that you're interested in that, and I'll do a separate video about pretty much what that person told me that led me to creating that video, which was a huge video for my particular channel, which is, as you can notice from the subscriber count, it is still a pretty small channel. So the algorithm is always going to do its thing when you're working with trending topics, and people, whatever's trending, I notice a lot of people, they like to watch content around it. And at a certain point, the trend does wear down, and it does die down, and so there'll be some fading off, but I don't think it ever just 100% dies as long as whatever that topic is relevant. Okay, so the algorithm is always going to be doing its thing, and I'm grateful for that. So a tip for my creators or my new creators: do trending topics, something that's of interest to you, and utilize your skills as well while doing it, and you never know what happens. Okay, the next one, some people might jump off here at this point because I really don't have any intentions of triggering people at all. But another thing that I noticed is that a lot of people don't like content like what I'm about to talk about next, or they're not the biggest fans of it. Let's just put it like that. They have the lowest views. And I'm going to give a few examples of content that's like that. So, one of the areas where there's a few views is accountability. So, one of the channels that I enjoy watching is R.C. Blake's channel. I love his dating advice, and how he approaches it from a fatherly perspective, and also obviously from his perspective of having in his past, as he has mentioned himself, prior to him marrying his wife over about 30 years ago, that he was a womanizer and that he did not respect women. So I appreciate him being honest about that and talking about how God changed his life and everything of that nature. So his titles, I looked through the titles and I noticed the titles that were the highest in views and the ones that were the lowest in views, or amongst the highest and the lowest in views in the last 2 months. So accountability. those were the ones with the least number of views on his page. So, for instance, one of those low ones includes 6 reasons women settle for a man's potential. Ouch, right? So if you're a woman watching this right now, and I don't know if you've gone over to his page and watched that video or whatever the case may be, or you even hearing that, if you've ever felt that way or been in that situation, because I know I've done it before, initially hearing that title, or if you're reading the title for yourself, it's not a good feeling. But it's very much speaking of accountability. As you can tell from the title, that video is going to speak about accountability. So when the ladies saw a title like that, they were like, yeah, I'm not, there were women that did watch. It said there were 16,000 views on there. But he's had views a lot higher than that on his videos of interest, okay? So another one is, let's see, make sure I find the right one. How to give this relationship to God. Now, to be noted is R.C. Blakes is a bishop. He ministers in churches. He's a Christian. He's a man of faith. And so he talks about God a lot when he does his videos. So people who already follow him, and I imagine many of them, most of them are of the Christian faith, right? They also believe in God, Jesus Christ. And, so I expect that people would want to hear more about God, but it doesn't seem like, interestingly enough, with that title having about 16,000 views, people are not really as interested in that as well. So I thought it was very interesting, especially for people in the Christian community, because the other thing I put on the list, in addition to accountability, was anything of a spiritual nature. So I thought those were some things that people are not really as interested in. So for R.C. Blake's page, when people already know he's going to be talking about God throughout all of his videos, for that be one of the lower, least watched videos, it was fairly interesting to note that. And then the other one I wanted to say related to accountability, signs he's avoiding commitment. Again, accountability there. A lot of accountability, because I know I've been there as well. Being stuck in a situation with a fella, wanted it to work, but did not want to acknowledge that maybe he was not really into me like I thought. Maybe it was just that he had a sexual interest in me and nothing more than that, okay? So another accountability title, there are 17,000 views on that video. Now let me tell you about a title of a video that had a lot of views. On the flip side, this one video, this was from about 2 months ago, 87,000 videos. You want to guess what was probably in the title? Okay, let me read it. How man gets a woman to court her for marriage. Keyword marriage. So a lot of women on his page who are subscribers to his page, if assuming they're single women like myself and they desire marriage like myself, that's going to be a title of high interest. So again, like I said, 87,000 views on that video. One of his highest watched videos in the last 2 months. Now, I'm like I said before, I enjoy his content on his page, so I don't ever find myself watching any of his videos and saying, "Oh, this was a bad video. I didn't learn anything good from it." But to be noted, when when people are interested in something particular, the views are going to be higher. So there's a higher interest in something like, okay, let me get to this point of meeting my king and marrying him. On this, like, I can gather that from a lot of the women who watch R.C. Blake's content. I'm not saying he's the one who's sending that message, because he's encouraging also women to, look within and work on themselves. And again, that goes back to the accountability part. That content gets fewer views in comparison. Okay, so I appreciate that he does accountability on his, but those don't get as high views. Content's still good though. Okay, so on the men's side, I'm gonna switch over to the men's side real quickly. Sexual immorality / lust. I think for men, that's one of the higher things are higher up on the list, that they're not really interested in watching and getting advice or information about that to improve in that area. I know there are some channels that are devoted to that, but those channels are not popular. They're made by men and devoted to men, but there's like a lot of men who are not interested in that, which kind of gives me the ideal that there are a lot of men, I ain't saying all men, but there are enough men for it to be a problem, that who have lust issues, that it is a pretty big problem. So for on the men's side, when it comes to lust, they don't like that. That content. I even have content on my page when it's interesting enough. I noticed in two different pieces of content I had on my page, people attacked me about it. Like if it had something related to sex or something in there, and the men focus in on those posts. And I thought that was very interesting. Even and got to the point of attacking me in both cases. And I want to say though, one account I know it was a man who was behind the account, because the picture and all that stuff. The other one, it was a woman's account. It was a woman's name and a cartoon face, but I feel like it was really a man hiding behind a woman's identity. Okay, so I thought it was interesting on those when I talked about lust, sex, then I got attacked by men from that. And I only feel like when that happens to me, when a man is attacking me in the comments and it's something related to sex, more than likely that he has a lust issue. And I'm not saying it to shame him at all, because people deal with all kind of issues all the time. But I feel it seems almost likely that you're shaming me because you want me to die down on talking about anything negative about lust. Maybe because deep down inside he's dealing with a battle and he wants to feel better about himself if he's dealing with that battle, if that makes sense. Okay, so and none of these cases I'm shaming the men for lust or anything like that. I mean, I'm just making the comments that I'm making in my videos. So I just thought it was very interesting. On the flip side, people who make content like Jason Wilson, and he did his content on lust before when he talked about Sharon Moore and Shannon Sharp. So for instance, with Shannon Sharp, his title was Shannon Sharp Fired, Another Warning to Men. So apparently this is coming off of another video he talked about with another man dealing with a lust. Then Sharon Moore's title, Sharon Moore Lesson, Why Lust Keeps Destroying Men. So you notice these men lost huge opportunities in their lives over lust. And those videos did very well on Jason Wilson's page because he's a huge proponent for men. And he talks to men. I mean, they trust his page for men by a man. And the men who watch his page really trust him. So on the Shannon Sharp video, he received 212,000 views, which I imagine most of those viewers were men. And then on the Sharon Moore video, he received 292,000 views, which again, I imagine most of those were men. So they do respect him a lot, which is great. The thing that I'm feeling like is really happening there is that though they respect him, I don't think most of them are changing their ways right after they watch his content. Not saying they can't, but I feel like some may be motivated to go start making a change after watching his content, and his specific content like that. Others may be in a position of being stuck. And so I'm not saying it to shame folks who are there. I love seeing content where people have said they have overcome, lust, and they're on the other side. It's out there, y'all. It's out there. I even have a reel or a short on my YouTube page, and you'll see in the thumbnail of that short, and it said like getting over your lustful way. And I was literally talking to the father of the host of an event that I was going to, and he was a pastor at this point in his life. But he talked about prior to that clip coming up that he first met his wife, and they didn't know each other. He said it was nothing but lust that he felt for her at the time. He said I wasn't thinking about marriage or anything. And I approached him and I asked him a question, after that session was over, and I said, you said you were lustful when you first met your wife. How did you transform yourself from being lustful the way you were to, so you could adequately court her? And so he explained that in that short. So if you go to that short, you'll find that whole little piece there. I'm standing up in the microphone. So I'm a true believer that you can overcome anything, especially if you're a person of faith. You can overcome it if you have that rock solid faith in Jesus Christ. He's going to get you through. The Lord is going to get you through no matter what, right? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right? So I'm a full believer in that. So I think people who watch the content of Jason Wilson, for instance, and they watch him talking about lust and maintaining, getting control over their flesh and whatnot, I know they wholeheartedly believe in what he's saying. I mean, I feel that. That's just me, that positive side of me that just wants to say something. Hey, I feel like they believe in it, but some people are stuck. Okay, so something else that I noticed that people, and it doesn't matter the gender on this one, that they don't like to watch personal development content. personal development content. So this is not necessarily physically working out, because there are channels where people, they're doing the fitness, and there are some people who are really dedicated to that. There's a fitness community, and I think it's a solid community. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the personal development, as in looking yourself in the mirror and examining yourself. And I ain't talking about necessarily the physical. I'm talking about the inside. Okay, what parts of your character can you work on? What ways can you be better? For instance, a lot of the marriage content I'm noticing today, and it's, for instance, like, R.C. Blakes, he's one of them. But then, like, Dr. Audubon Tart, Dr. Zeb Talley, I watch their channels on YouTube as well. And they're like, you need to work on, and then I call her Miss Anita. She's another therapist on YouTube. Her page is Better Love Movement. So then they all talk about becoming the partner that you desire for yourself. Like, you need to become the partner that you desire for yourself. So that requires what? Personal development. And so a lot of those views on type videos like that on becoming a better version of yourself, people don't like those, because it pulls out stuff that sometimes some people, we all go through different things, right? We all have past moments of shame. And so we want to keep some things buried. We don't want it to be revealed and put out into the world. So when it comes to personal development, you actually have to be willing to dig out some of this stuff so you can work through it, and so you can come out more strong and confident and on the other side and ready to go, ready to take on what you're trying to take on. If you're trying to date somebody and meet somebody new and approach everything with a fresh perspective and a healthy perspective, that's what you need to do. I interestingly noticed that there are very few and low views on those type of videos. Okay, the only thing I could point out is, okay, like, when I think about outcomes, like I say positive outcomes, the people who've got to the other side of it, transformations. I know for me, there was a particular video I did not too long ago, and it was pertaining to me getting back to God. And so I know the title of that video, and I did have a thumbnail on there so people could see, the thumbnail and get more information. But the title is, if you're seeing this, you're next, congratulations. But I originally did put up about how, in the title, about being obedient led me to a big surprise blessing. So I did that video, and somewhere along the way I was talking about going through a 40-day fast. So if people see stuff like that, like, oh, that's okay, she got a great result, which is great in the end, but oh, she had to do work for 40 days. People they don't really like to look at that content that much. Stuff that requires you to get work for, but they want that big blessing that's at the end, right? That big great outcome at the end, but not the work that goes into it. So that actually ties very closely to the personal development. So they like seeing positive outcomes, but sometimes they'll watch that less, or they'll cut off after they see what they want to see, or even skip around the video until they see what they want to see, but skip the pieces about, oh, this is what I did to get there, if that makes sense. And all of the content I can think about other than that is things pertaining to kids. Anything pertaining to kids that's about improving kids' life, their personal development, them working on them so they have higher self-esteem, and they're confident going into the world. They're not so depressed, giving them more opportunities in life, whatnot. And I'm not talking about stuff like sports, and we know there's stuff like sports and dance and stuff. Of course, those videos pop off and go off the charts because people always want to find ways to get those kids and those professional, whatever, like sports, whatever that may be. So they, fortunately at some point, can bring back some money back home to the family, and I get it. Okay, but outside of that, to my personal development for kids, that content is, or anything spiritual for a child, leading that child to Christ, that content is typically not a big, not something that's big that's watched. Okay, now let's look to the other side. Content that people will watch. And what I noticed, that content that people will watch the most in general when on YouTube, it relates a lot to escaping reality, which I get. Okay, we want to get on and we want to decompress, right? We want to decompress. We don't want to be worried about what's going to happen the next day. We just want to have our moment to unwind. So these are the types of content that I noticed that a lot of people will give a lot more interest in, give a lot more attention to, and have a lot more interest in. Things like comedy. Okay, I get it. I watched comedic content before on YouTube. Game shows, including things like so there's game shows and things like even dating game shows. Or like dating shows, like ever heard about Pop the Balloon? whatever variations there are of that and all the other game shows they have out there. People like that, I get it. Gossip content. Anybody watch the gossip content? So anything that's new about a celebrity that's fresh and ready to go out there into the world, people watch that a lot. Anything pertaining to dating, relationship, and or marriage, that content is booming right now as well. So this is stuff that people love to watch and they like seeing. Oh yeah, and that goes along with also with proposal videos. Those get a lot of videos. Like I see the titles a lot of times. I just got engaged. Those videos seem like they blow up overnight for those particular creators. And especially when they make a vlog out the whole experience and people get to see it and they like to have the feels. I imagine that for the women, it's huge for women. I've watched probably about 3 or 4 of these type of videos and I will admit they are beautiful. So I can imagine for the women who like get all emotional, like, oh yes, this is lovely. I would love this for myself. They are all into that. The women there is for the women. Let's just say that information, that content is really for the women. And so there's a lot of views on that. Okay. So yeah, notice like a huge, like people just watch that a lot. Not saying anything bad about watching that. Just studying the stats and stuff that was more interesting. Like again, my own stats, and then looking across YouTube, even the different type videos that I had. I wouldn't necessarily say it was anything pertaining to, I guess, necessarily gossip or whatever. But like for instance, my review video was a really big one. It's the largest one, but it was giving information about somebody who was trending. So that was pretty popular on my page. That was a pretty big deal. Okay. So yeah, I noticed those different I don't know, trends on YouTube, but I don't know if you've been noticing that as well. But something I wanted to note here that I saw in an article, and it was talking about how we watch things and how it impacts us. And the author, he said this, and he wrote a book called The Meaning of Life, and he was saying love and happiness, it occurs on the right side of the brain, but technology pushes you to the left side of the brain systematically. The more hours you spend on your phone, the more you fritter away your time. The more that you scroll at night, the less likely you are to understand the meaning of your life. And that's the beginning of the problem that we see today. So when I look at these trends, I think, okay, if there's dissatisfaction that I'm seeing with people, sometimes it's connected, and I'm not even talking about like Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all that. I'm not even talking about that. So I get that the problem, there could actually be a huge problem when it comes to those particular platforms. But then YouTube, people, that's another escape for people as well. And sometimes, and I even had to go and do a limit myself, like a 3-hour a day limit for myself on YouTube to avoid an addiction, because that actually can rewire your brain depending on how much you watch. So it makes sense that people, when they get on these platforms, they watch things that are highly entertaining to them and that keep them excited and whatnot. But over time, I don't know if you know, but it wires your brain in a certain way to always want that, which will make sense as to why people are less likely to lean toward the other content that is quote unquote more boring, even though it's more so focusing on helping yourself to be a better individual so that you can live a more fulfilling life. And the last point I want to leave you with came from an article that I read just today, and the article, of all things, was called The Great Divorce on the Rise, as more seniors choose I Don't. And so the little subtitle says, more than ever, married Americans 50 and older are breaking up. Counselors, lawyers, and the newly single explain why. Okay, so then they interviewed this one man somewhere in the United States. Okay, so his name was Robert Buchanan of Ross. Never thought he'd be a part of the Great Divorce group that first surged during the 1990s through the late 2000s. This interview is the first time I've heard that term, said Buchanan, 48, who's co-owner of Illusion Brewing Co. in Vandergrift. I feel so cheated out of my life right now, but thankful that the marriage is ending while I still have a few years to rebuild. Buchanan said his 26-year marriage ended for many reasons. He blames in part smartphones and social media as a factor in the increase in great divorces. As people see others leading glamorous lives, it feeds the idea that so much is missing in yours. I was like, ooh, Robert made a good point there, And I'm not here to debate about what he said about marriage and how much time he feel like he lost in marriage and all that. I ain't here to debate all that. Robert's opinion was his viewpoint, and that's all what it was. But I do 100% agree with that last part of what he said about, he did acknowledge there was a multitude of factors that led to his divorce. But one thing he pointed out was social media. I could agree with that 100%. 100%. I've noticed that more comparison, and I've heard more studies saying that people look at their relationships negatively because they're on social media so much, looking at everybody else's relationship. And interest enough, part of the time, them relationships not even real. They just putting on for the what they call putting on for the gram. Especially if they influencers, they getting a check behind it. So I mean, just something to keep in mind as we're scrolling and going on these sites and going on YouTube and scrolling through and seeing somebody else's fantastic world, because we really don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes. And just yet another reminder to appreciate what you have. Keep always having faith in you. Have faith that you can grow and become a better version of yourself, and that you can have the best life that's meant for you, because God wants that for you and you are totally worth it. But, hope this study has brought some insight to you that maybe something you had not thought of before. And I look forward to talking to you all on the next video. Bye bye.